Hey there guys, it's Metro, and today we're back with the Blood Death Knight topic guides that we've been starting here with Battle for Azeroth's launch. And today we're going to be talking about Azerite traits, where to acquire them, and which ones I might recommend. So this is going to be a little different than the normal video. Normally I try to, give like exact precision on this topic, but there's so many combinations and like the different tiers of the gear that it's kind of hard to break it down properly. So instead what we're going to do is we're going to go through every Azerite piece. I'm going to give you a general feeling I have about the trait, the gear, the traits on the gear, and hopefully from that you could learn kind of a better opinion about what we should be looking for in gear. Maybe things will switch up, but there is like a bunch of different places that you can get Azerite gear besides just dungeons and raids. Obviously, eventually, the best pieces are going to come from dungeons and raids. So this is where we're going to focus today. So we're going to start with dungeons. All right, we got Yasma as a Blood Death Knight. There's only the one piece. It is a helm. And for the most part, I'm going to ignore this trait. I always feel like it's better to take the Blood Death Knight specific trait. And this situation is no different. Casting Death and Decay impales your enemies with bone spikes, inflicting 375 physical damage and healing you for blah, blah, blah. So that's not a bad trait. It's not a good trait, but it's not bad for 5-mans. Anytime where you could hit multiple targets with this Death and Decay ability, it's going to heal you for quite a lot. And that could really add up, especially if you have multiple traits of this. I would consider Bone Spike Graveyard itself a pretty low tier situational ability, one that I probably wouldn't use on my gear unless I absolutely had to. And, we might actually have to depending on what else is on this gear. So let's take a look. Mastery and Leech increase. So this is okay, not great. Damaging, you basically gain DPS, but it's removed when you take damage. So this is very bad for Blood Decay. And Winds of War, stacking dodge. Terrible for Blood Decay. This is not good. So we would take this one. Right? It's a decent option. Mastery is pretty good now for Blood Decay, and Leech is obviously great. But again, kind of mid-tier on all the second-tier traits. Not the best one. And then we have Gem Hide on this, which was really good on the beta, but has been nerfed pretty substantially. It's a pretty low amount of stats. I don't think I would like that. This one is probably what I would take. It's still not great, but I think it's just better than Gem High. Whenever you take damage, heal for that amount cannot occur. So that's pretty good. Obviously, taking damage and healing are good Blood Decay things. So this piece is not great. Overall, I would not recommend wearing this piece. But if you have it, I would definitely recommend taking Bone Spike Graveyard, Blood Siphon, and Impassive Visage. Okay, so let's move on to Freehold. Now, this place has considerably better gear. Bones of the Damned, one of the best defensive outright. Like, if you're looking to reduce, especially physical damage, this is going to be one of the ones you want to take. Marrowrend has a chance to grant an extra charge of Bone Shield, which is very good. And Bone Shield increases your armor by an additional 173. Now, that's not a ton, but if you have, again, a higher item level version, and you could stack a couple of these, this might be one of the best actual reductive traits in the game. So it's not a bad choice. Probably very good if you're looking for reduction only. Kind of average if you're not really worried about just that. We have Azerite Energy courses through you, reaching 90 strength and then diminishing down to 15 strength. That's not very good. Oh, apparently it's getting dark out in-game. That's not very good for 5-mans especially. Might be all right for raids depending on how it works, but I would probably avoid that one. This one is very cool. Your damaging abilities have a chance to implant an Azerite Globule on your enemy. When an enemy collects 3 Azerite Globules, they explode. This is what I've been using. I think it's really good for Mythic Plus. Probably one of the best second-tier traits from Mythic Plus outright. So I would definitely recommend this one if you're doing a lot of 5-mans, or even in raids if you're doing a lot of AoE situations. And then this is the tanking one. Damage taken, chance to put basically a health and armor buff underneath you for 10 seconds. Now, 10 seconds is not very big. The armor itself that you get is not a lot. The health that you get is somewhat substantial, but I don't feel like this is a great trait, especially since you actually have to stand in it. This could be a real big problem in Mythic Plus, and even in raids too. So I wouldn't recommend this trait. And then finally, the final tier is Resounding Protection. This is the Pride-as-like trait. This is going to be extremely good for anybody looking to survive extra damage. And as you see, it's already 8k. That's nothing to sneeze at only 340 item level. So, if you can get 3 of those stacked up on your gear, that's way better than Pride-as was, right? So, yeah, it's not a bad choice. But the one that I would recommend, when an enemy you harm dies, you heal for 4,000. and you gain speed. That is really good for Mythic Plus. Useless for raids. Absolutely terrible for raids, unless you're, of course, fighting like an ad fight. But this is extremely good for Mythic Plus. I would recommend this above all else. But both of these are very good. This is good for raids. This is good for Mythic Plus. So this is a pretty good piece overall. Bones of the Damned, maybe Azerite Globules for 5-mans, maybe Shimmering Haven for raids. Probably wouldn't take Earthlink, and then you have great defensive trades. So that's a good option there. Now, unfortunately, this piece is not great. This has, again, the Bone Spike Graveyard, which we spoke about, and similar other traits that we talked about. Okay, it's light out again. Your damaging abilities have a chance to grant you... This is pretty good. It can give you stats. I haven't used this yet. I don't know. Maybe you can get multiple sets of these stats. Maybe one haste and mastery might overlap, something like that. I don't know. But regardless, it's pretty good. I would probably take this on this item just because getting extra haste or even mastery and verse, those can be very valuable. But here we have one of the best traits in the game. Anti-magic shell absorbs an additional amount of damage. The duration increases 6 seconds. That's not really that important. But the stacking component is the actual numerical value, 13k extra absorb. That is very, very, very important. And this is going to be one of those traits that you kind of want to watch for and hang on to. Because as long as you can keep item level, like gear at relatively high item level with this trait on it, this is going to be one of those ones that you switch on to for certain types of fights, maybe even certain types of dungeons. So again, not a great item, but it's got a trait on it that could make it very good, all right? So you see why this is so difficult to discuss properly. King's Rest. Now, here we go. Same deal. Has Runic Barrier on it, but it has Marrow Blood instead. Death Strike heals for an additional 181, very low number, for each remaining charge of Bone Shield. So, of course, if you have 10 remaining charges of Bone Shield, it's going to heal for, a couple thousand. That's pretty good. But realistically, you're never going to have 10. You'll probably always be kind of hovering around 5 or 6. So I don't know. This trait kind of scares me. It seems very undertuned. It's like they're really hesitant to make Death Strike any more overpowered than it already is. So that makes me really hesitant to take this piece. We've already looked at this. We have not looked at this yet. This is great. Taking damage has a chance to grant you Azerite Veins, healing you for 5,100 every 2.7 seconds, which is scaling with haste apparently, and lasts 18 seconds or until you're fully healed, which is great. Great for any tank, especially but Blood Death Knight. I think it'd probably be even better for Brewmaster, as they're kind of always never at full health. But this is an amazing trait for any type of soloing push, anything that you need the extra healing for. This has to be a top tier trait. If you're actually worried about survival, especially in 5-mans, I'd say this is the trait for you. So this piece has 2 really good traits on it. A very niche trait, also has the Impassive Visage that we already talked about. Pretty good heal. So, some very good healing. This is actually a great self-healing trait, set of traits. So maybe this item is good if you want to do some soloing, you know what I mean? But as you see, it's so difficult to pin down exactly which items might be best in slot. Now, here we go. We have another Bones of the Damned, but we have a new trait down here. Falling below 40% health grants you 822 armor for 10 seconds. Taking further damage reduces the armor granted. So it's another pretty stable trait, a trait that it might be pretty good for defense. And of course, we also have when you're surrounded by 4 or more enemies, gain a shield that absorbs 9k. That is a very, very good trait for any type of Mythic Plus scenario. This is going to happen every pack. You're always going to be fighting more than 3 mobs, I'd imagine. So very, very good. So if you're worried about survival in 5-mans, Bones of the Damned for the extra survival, Alablative Shield, a Blad of Shield, I don't know, not an English major as you can tell, and then Bulwark of the Masses. Great combinations. Oh, or maybe you need the healing, you know what I mean? So these are things to consider. These are good traits. This is a great trait for Mythic Plus survival, okay? So make sure you're considering that. Moving on to Shrine of the Storm. Now here is where things start to get interesting. We see our first Embrace of the Darkfallen, which if you haven't seen the video I made earlier in the year on Embrace of the Darkfallen, long story short, at heroic item level, the trait times 3. So if you have 3 Embrace of the Darkfallen traits, you're going to get 28% leech every time Vampiric Blood ends for 20 seconds. 28% leech. That is absurd. Already overpowered. I can see this getting nerfed. I'm not even going to lie about it. But we have an amazing combination on this gear. Vampiric Blood, Azerite Globules, and this is probably never really going to come into play, but if for some reason it does, you have a great heal on that. And then, of course, you have the passive Impassive Visage, ironically. So a great healing item. Again, if you need extra healing, this is a good one. But anytime you see Embrace of the Darkfallen, you need to be on alert. I would say this is a top tier trait. I would say this is number one for any type of general survival situation like you might find yourself in a raid, okay? Vampiric blood expiring, leeches gained. This is huge. Even though people are going to say, well, it's the time that you need the leech the least, it's still an extra 20 seconds of absurd healing. It's probably better than the actual vamp blood healing, okay? Very, very good. We have a chest as well, which has a pretty interesting spread of traits. Runic Barrier, we've talked about. Resounding Protection, we've talked about. This is interesting. Hard Strike amplifies your blood plague on your primary target for 15 seconds, causing it to drain an additional. It's a pretty good kind of check multiple boxes trait. It's going to do some healing, going to do some DPS. Not bad. Deep cuts. But this one is very interesting. Increasing your haste by 64 and your avoidance by 32. This has all the makings of one of the best traits in the game. But the numbers on it are very, very low. I don't know. I don't know how I feel about it, but if this ever gets buffed or you can get like high item levels, high values of it, I would definitely say that this is a good option. So not a great piece overall. This trait I would say is not very good at all. And again, Runic Barrier, like, you know, if you can get 3 pieces with Runic Barrier on it, or, you know, even 3 pieces with Resounding Protection on it, bank them. Keep them in your bags, because you never know when stacking those 3 might be a huge, huge deal for some type of fight. So anyway, Temple of Sethralis next. This one, I think, yeah, so here we go. First Eternal Rune Weapon. Hopefully, if you've been watching the stream, you know just how strong this trait is. Dancing Rune Weapon grants you 514 strength, which is quite a good amount. And each rune spent increases its duration by 0.5. So 1 Marrow Rend increases it by a full second, up to a maximum of 5 seconds. So you could pretty easily get up to at least, you know, 3 or 4, maybe even 5 seconds if you're really, especially with Bloodlust, you should be able to do that. And the cool thing about this is it actually, like, the strength element stays with it as long as Dancing Rune Weapon is up. So it's not just, you know, for the normal duration. So, you know, having that extra strength, especially if you can get multiple traits, I think this is the best trait in the game. This is great for everything. It's going to be good for 5-man. It's going to be good for raiding, burst DPS, you know, burst healing, burst defense, everything. Everything. Dancing Rune Weapon checks all the boxes, guys. This is what we want, okay? The best trait in the game. If you can get 3 pieces, high item level, with this on it, you're going to have a resounding burst winner. It's going to be so much extra strength, and obviously the extra seconds are going to help a lot too. So the rest of the stuff on here we already talked about. I don't think we've seen this. It's an okay DPS ability. Not great, but, you know, it's alright. I would probably take Life Speed and Resounding Protection on top of Eternal Rune Weapon. So it's not a bad option. Typically, not a great combination, but it's pretty good. We've already seen Bone Spike Graveyard. We've already seen how good Azerite Globules can be. We have a new trait here, Crystalline Carapace. When dealt damage greater than 10% of your maximum health, gain 82 armor and causes melee attackers to suffer 94 damage. Not bad. Checks a couple boxes. Really low numbers again. Once again, really low. But the good thing, Blood DK is probably always going to be taking 10% of your maximum health. Pretty much every other, you know, like, you don't reduce a lot of damage. So not a great trait. Overall, I would say this piece, it can make the dungeon run worth it, but I wouldn't, there's better, let's put it that way, there's better, but it's one of the Eternal Rune Weapon pieces, so keep that in your mind. Temple of Sethralis has an Eternal Rune Weapon, okay, or has an Eternal Rune Weapon trait. Here's another Embrace of the Darkfallen. Anytime you see this, you should be making a note. Motherlode has an Embrace of the Darkfallen trait, okay? And again, you'll be getting these from Mythic Plus, not from the completion, but from the cache. So, you know, obviously for now, you're worrying about them from zeros, but in the future, you'll just be hoping to get lucky by getting them. And again, ablative shielding, I don't know. And, you know, while there are no enemies within 20 yards, you heal for 784. That is pretty much useless. I mean, it might be good for running between packs, but I don't think that has any real use. And again, I'm just ignoring these. I don't feel like, you know, if it's so bad that you have to take one of these general ones, even if they end up being good, then Blizzard just needs to redesign the system. I don't want to even deal with those as a tank. I feel like the utility ones and everything else are just so powerful that we shouldn't even be worried. Now, Underrot, here we go. This is a very, very, very good piece. I would recommend everybody getting this helm, okay? Eternal Rune Weapon. Strength in numbers is actually a really good one. Taking damage has a chance to increase your maximum health by that amount. Not bad at all. But it's also got Azerite Globules on it, which I think the best trait in the game in this second row. So we already have 2 of the best traits in the game. And then, of course, we have Resounding Protection, which is always going to be good. And we have increases your movement speed by 16% of your highest secondary rating up to 5%. So that is already an amazing piece. Pretty much, there's like 5 or 6 different combinations that you could use that would be good on this piece of gear. So I would say this is the best in slot dungeon piece. Okay, Great Helm of Putrid Path from Underrot. Of course, you'll get it randomly in the chest, but if you can manage to get Eternal Rune Weapon on any piece, especially for dungeon content, you're going to want to take note. All right. And finally, we have our first March of the Damned trait, which I think is probably the most impactful trait in the game for any tank. I'm going to tell you why. When you use Death's Advance, you gain 279 speed. That is a lot of speed. Get this trait and equip it and see how much speed you get. It is a lot. All right. If you can get, again, multiple pieces with this on it, you're going to want to keep them around because there might be a time where you want to run really fast. And running fast is definitely a good thing. Okay. So it's not a great trait. It's not a great trait spread. Otherwise, it has some good tier 2s. I'd say Azerite Veins and Azerite Globules are both good, one for offense, one for defense, and Bones of the Damned can be very good. It depends. Do you want to use this piece just because of March of the Damned? The answer might be yes, especially if you don't have, 3 of the other gear pieces of gear with good traits on it. So this makes Underrot a very desirable dungeon location, especially now during Mythic Plus, or during Mythic Zeros, and eventually, hopefully, you'll see one of these pieces from your chest. Now, Overseer Korgus, this is Tol Dagor. This has a very odd spread of traits, nothing really to remark on over the fact that March of the Damned again. So if you get this piece, might want to hang on to it just because of March of the Damned. Otherwise, very, very, very weak piece. There's a lot of really bad helms, I find. And again, another Embrace of the Darkfallen. Ashvane Wardens, Curious, another Embrace of the Darkfallen. So you might be running into these. Definitely hang on to any Embrace of the Darkfallen traits and any Dance of Darkness traits. And then Waycrest Manor, we have another Eternal Rune Weapon. This time, it's not a very good spread of the rest of the traits. I don't know what it would even take here. I guess Crystalline Carapace, just because it does a little bit. I would probably try this, honestly. Your damaging abilities have a chance to grant. That would probably be what I would just try for 5 minutes, just to see how much damage it did. And then, of course, Vampiric Speed, which can be very, very good. So, not a bad opener. Ideally, okay, so let's talk now that we've gone through all the dungeons. Ideally, this is what your ideal piece would have on it. It would have Eternal Rune Weapon on. Let's see if we can find a better example. Obviously, the one from Underrot is as close as we're gonna get. Eternal Rune Weapon on this one, okay? Azerite Globules or Azerite Veins on this one, and then on the inside it would have the March of the Damned one, okay? March of the Damned is that important. It is really, really fast. You're going to make yourself very fast. If you can get a couple stacks of that, it's going to really change the way your Death Knight plays, okay? So your ideal piece of gear, for some reason you find like different permutations of what we're talking about, will have either Eternal Rune Weapon first, or maybe Embrace of the Darkfallen second. It will have either Azerite Globules or Azerite Veins, the healing one, second row. And then, Resounding Protection's not bad, Long Strider's not bad, but really we're chasing the March of the Damned one because it's really, really, really good for Blood DK's, the biggest problem with Blood DK's kit. And then finally, we're going to take a look at the ones in raids. Now, ironically, there's actually multiple in raids, which is nice. We'll have a lot more chances to get them. So let's take a look at Helms right out of the gate. Eternal Rune Weapon. This is a normal piece. Let's take a look actually at Mythic real quick. So here's a Mythic piece. Do I have to reload it? Oh, yeah, there we go. 781 strength. So that is already looking to be very good. Imagine having, and this is what we're going to get from 5-mans, from a 10 cash, right? A 385. So you're going to see 781 strength on these Eternal Rune Weapon traits, which is very, very, very good. All right, having 3 of those would be so much burst DPS. But again, has Azerite Veins, top notch, 2 out of 3 so far. And, some decent options in the middle row, kind of like mid-tier options. Not great, but this is a very, very, very good piece from rating. Here's another, semi-decent piece. Realistically, Marrow Blood, I don't know. These are never going to be used. But, you also have to remember that these raid-specific ones have this as well, okay? So this only works in Uldir. I'm not going to talk about this too much. I'd imagine this is going to be something that you want on every time you raid. But for the most part, we're looking at ones that are going to offer you both. Something here as well, which is going to be very good for raiding, and something here, which can be very good as well, in case that thing is not very good, all right? So this is a top tier piece. This is a piece that if you can get your hands on in raid, and it only comes from Mother, even on Heroic, I mean, obviously, even on Heroic, 12k, let's see what it is on Heroic. Even on heroic, 11k absorb for resounding protection, 4k, almost 4k for that. Let's take a look at what the difference is. It is 4.5k. So yeah, you know, you see these things climbing very rapidly, and of course they will stack to great effect. And then let's look at chests. We can take a look at chests. There are 2 chests as well. Here we go. March of the Damned from Raid. This is very good. Of course, getting it from Raid is going to be one of the most reliable ways to get this gear. As you see, Mythic. This is from Vectis. Going to be a little bit harder to get, obviously. But regardless, even on... let's just do Heroic, because obviously Heroic is going to be what most people get. So 321, and of course, 228 extra armor for each bone shield. Or just having bone shield, that is, not each bone shield. So this is a good, you know, not a bad chest. Realistically, there's better chests from 5-man, so... and then again, this is actually a really terrible one. It's from Zool, luckily one of the harder bosses. So yeah, I would probably not use this piece under any circumstances. It has a very poor spread of traits, like, you know, these things. I don't know. Maybe this is going to end up being good, but you know, having March of the Damned on it and Azerite Globules, that's always going to be interesting. But it's just the second row is just not good enough. The outer row doesn't have much compelling to be played with. And then, of course, March of the Damned, pretty much the only reason to even care about it. And then finally, we're going to take a look at, what's the other piece that we were missing? Shoulders. All right, here's the shoulders. And we have Embrace of the Darkfallen, Azerite Globules, Runic Barrier. Sounds good to me. So there we go. We see our 3 pieces from raids that we really want to get. We want to get these shoulders. Obviously, this is the only piece. We want to get this helm here from Mother. Dancing Rune Weapon extended with Eternal Rune Weapon plus Azerite Veins, an amazing piece. And of course, the chest, the best option is from Vectis, which just because it has March of the Damned, a little bit of passive damage reduction from Bones of the Damned as well. So here's your options. Hopefully this made sense. Like I said, it's not an easy 1, 2, 3. You're not able to just say this is the best something. But if you're looking for one piece from 5-mans, I would definitely, and not this piece, I would definitely recommend this helm. This helm has everything you want on it. If only it had the March of the Damned trait on it, this would be an amazing item. But yeah, I would really recommend this piece, especially for 5-mans. If you can manage to get your hand on it, this is the one. So if you guys have any questions, let me know. I'm willing to talk about any type of permutations as well. But hopefully you got an understanding of like what traits we're looking for. Like I said, Eternal Rune Weapon, Embrace of the Darkfallen. I think these are going to be the best ones for every content. Azerite Globules is going to be great for AoE. Azerite Veins is going to be great for survival. March of the Damned going to be great for all types of combat. Resounding Protection. Really, any of these inner traits can end up being good in some way. So anyway, thanks for watching. I'm sure you guys will have questions. Let me know. Otherwise, we will see you guys in the next one.